Yeah, that's cool.
About 22.
Cool, gang. So I've got a awesome surprise for you guys today. We have not one but two people coming to chat to you today. The first one of whom is Sarah, sitting right here, and then we're going to have the ChemSoc president Jude come and talk to you guys about Buddy Week or Buddy Term next term. So getting paired up with a postgrad student and getting to kind of see what life is like as a research student in the labs. And I'll have a little chat to him about his kind of academic journey here at UC as well. He's one of these people who's done a 3-year BSc and is now actually gone into in engineering in second pro, so doing a 2-year extension on that, and so he'll end up graduating with a double degree in BSc and Bachelor of Engineering with honours. So if that's something you're thinking about, he might be able to give you some kind of useful information about how he's found that so far. All right, so maybe Sarah will get you to stand up so that everyone can see you. Okay. Also, I'm recording. Are you okay with that? Because if there are people not here, I'll just pass the link on to them. All right, so we'll start with who are you and where have you come here from?
Okay, so this isn't awkward at all. Kia ora koutou, nā mai haere mai. So as Deb said, I'm Sarah Masters, and as you can tell from the accent, I am not a native Kiwi. I was actually born in England, but I don't say that too loudly because I was raised in Scotland. And
it's a little bit like New Zealand, Australia.
New Zealand, Australia, yeah, but without the water in between. And without pavlova, I think, as well. So, I was raised in southwest Scotland and then went to University of Edinburgh a very long time ago now, and spent a long time in Edinburgh, and then eventually emigrated here just at the start of 2011.
All right, so we might rewind a little bit, and can you tell us about what you studied in high school and then what you studied at university?
Yeah, okay, so throughout school I really loved chemistry. I had a really great chemistry teacher.
Surprise!
Yeah. But he taught chemistry and physics, and so whilst I was never as good at physics, I enjoyed both of them, and I really enjoyed history as well. And so when I got in the UK system in Scotland, so the Scottish education system is different from the English education system, of course, because we have to be different. But when you get to the final year at school in Scotland, it's called 6th year studies, and you really specialise at that point. And I wanted to do both chemistry and history, which nobody does. Okay, so it's a real nightmare for the timetable but they managed to do it. And so I did both of those at school in my final year. But then I was a bit rubbish at remembering dates of when stuff happened. And I know you can go and look things up in a book, but I could see more of a future, if you like, career-wise in chemistry. And so that's why I chose to do that at uni.
Okay, cool. And so then you did a Bachelor of Science, is that right?
Bachelor of Science with honours, so it's automatically step back again. As I was going through university, they introduced something called the MChem, which is actually a 5-year degree in Scotland and a 4-year degree in England, because they do an extra year at school and they do A-levels, so somewhat confusing. But when I went through it, it was a 4-year honours degree, and everybody automatically went through the 4-year programme. So coming here was actually a bit of a culture shock, because it's a 3-year bachelor's, and then the honours is a bit of a sort of add-on, whereas in the UK it was very much you go in, you do your honours degree, you graduate with your honours degree.
All right, so then does that honours degree qualify you for directly going into a PhD, which I'm assuming you did since you're now here talking to us as a lecturer? Okay, yes. So you decided that you hadn't had enough of being at school and university, so you just wanted more?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what to do at the end of my degree, and I should put a caveat that nowadays the MChem, which is a full year dedicated research at the end of your study with a few little module courses put in, is now considered the gold standard, if you like, for entry into PhD in the UK anyway. But you can certainly go in with an honours degree into PhD. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do.
You were procrastinating about making a decision.
I'd love to give you some sort of deep, meaningful explanation as to why I went to do a PhD, but I genuinely didn't know what I wanted to do, and this looked like kind of fun. and you got to wear a lab coat for another 3 years, so I thought, why not?
And I guess you must have enjoyed your research experience during your honours year enough to...
Yeah, so the honours research is somewhat related to what I then did at my PhD, but not really, in that it was biochemistry related, so it was all working with proteins and protein structure and manipulating structure, taking bits out, putting bits in, and looking at the function of the proteins. So
I didn't know that. I did that too.
Yeah.
That was weird. Okay,
Yeah.
now we're both physical chemists. Go figure.
Yeah, no,
All right.
yeah, the interchangeable female physical chemist, don't forget.
Apparently.
Although I'm growing my hair, so
Yeah,
hopefully eventually.
people have confused us because
Yeah.
we look so similar and
Yeah.
like totally...
Yeah, a few years ago my hair was basically the same length as Deb's, and then everybody was just like, a female physical chemist.
Like
you must
obviously
be.
the same height and same hair colour, right? Like you can look like
Yeah.
totally
Yeah,
indistinguishable.
absolutely, same build, everything.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Moving along.
What was I saying?
You were doing
so
a
that was
biochem
my
thing.
honours project was much more biochemistry, and then at the end of that there weren't any positions in that group, but there was with my supervisor David. He had some funding from the national funding body in the UK, and so yeah, I went and did a PhD with him instead.
And what did you do then?
So
Like what did you actually do?
just sat in front of a computer all day.
Well, no, we'll get to that. Like,
Yeah.
what science did you do?
All right, so it's structural chemistry, so molecular structure.
You can make it sound so much more exciting than that.
I could do, yeah. I was about to, only you interrupted me.
Okay, sorry. Like shooting electron guns at things. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's what's called electron diffraction, so it's molecular structure, but in the gas phase. So what I was going to say was you're all familiar with crystallography, right? You make something in the lab, you get a nice crystal of it, so sort of prove that you've made it, and then you take it down to Matt, or whoever happens to be down on the diffractometer, and you get a nice crystal structure. What's happening there is you're firing X-rays at your sample and getting a diffraction off the sample and then analysing that diffraction pattern to get a structure. Okay? So basically what I did was essentially the same thing, only not using X-rays but using electrons, and not using a solid but using a gas. And that instantly makes things harder because you need a vacuum, because you don't want other stuff in there. You only want to be shooting the electrons at the thing that you want to study. And then deconvoluting the data as well can be a little bit more complicated, because whereas with a diffraction pattern from an X-ray you get a nice series of spots that you can then interpret into a three-dimensional pattern. Because we have a gas, then your gas is randomly orientated with respect to your electron beam, instantly makes things more complicated. So we have some dedicated programs to unpack all of that. And then the challenge that I was looking at, so I mean electron diffraction's been around since the 1920s. It's almost 100 years actually. But looking at larger and larger systems is really, really difficult, because the bigger a molecule you have, quite often you don't have as much symmetry in there, which makes it then harder to analyse the data that you get out of it. So what I was doing was developing programs which could combine information from calculations, so more along lines of what Deb does.
I haven't spoken to these guys, but
Okay,
I do, yeah.
right, okay. Well, when Deb talks to you,
In semester 2,
some of
if you remember that
some
one.
of what she'll talk about will be computational methods. So you can go into a computer, say, calculate this, and the computer spits some information back at you.
It's
and
like
then
super that easy. Like
Yeah,
you literally
yeah,
just like
totally
jump
that
on.
easy. Yeah, it's a black box, junk in, junk out, right?
Sure.
And then you take that information but incorporate it into the structural analysis and using it as extra observations for the experiments. So I was all developing that for much larger systems. It had been done for smaller systems, but we didn't know if it would work for bigger systems and less symmetric systems. So that's what I was doing.
I'm very disappointed you still haven't used the phrase shooting an electron gun at things.
Yeah,
Seriously.
okay, so shooting electrons at things in a vacuum, and actually one of the things we were looking at are what are called jack-in-the-box molecules. So they're quite cool.
You shoot the electron gun at it and then it does something.
No.
Oh.
It does something, then you shoot the electrons at it.
All right, okay.
You just heat it up ever so
So
slightly. So it's a molecule that's got a phosphorus bond in the middle, like that. And lots of shrubbery around here which shield that central phosphorus bond from reaction. But if you put a little bit of energy into the system, heat it up, then you can get rearrangement of all the shrubbery, which then forces this bond apart, and it kind of shoots apart like a jack-in-the-box. So does everybody know what a jack-in-the-box is? Yeah? Okay, the little thing that you shove in a box and you wind the handle, put some energy in, and out it comes.
But they don't know who Kim Hill is.
Really?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, I got only like 1 or 2 hands when I asked that.
Oh, well, okay, you guys need to start listening to Radio New Zealand.
They're not old enough. Anyway, never mind. That's
Yeah.
a digression.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so do you still have an electron? What are you doing now? Do you still have an electron gun? Can these guys shoot it at things?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. We've got one in the not the basement, ground floor of the Rutherford building. So there's a whole kind of structural suite, if you like, on the ground floor of Rutherford. So you've got the X-ray diffractometer, there's a powder diffractometer there as well. I don't know, is Matt going to come and talk at some point?
I don't think I invited him, but I can.
Yeah, that would be quite interesting actually. Anyway, so you've got all the solid state diffraction, then you've got the gas phase diffraction, and then you've got the mass spec and the NMR. So there's a whole big suite of analysis that we have down there to study molecules of some sort or materials as well.
Cool. So, aside from shooting electron guns, I am like
You're going to persist with
revisiting
shooting
this.
electron guns, yeah?
No, aside from shooting electron guns at things, what would a typical day in the life of a postgrad research student in your group look like?
Yeah,
Mostly
okay.
electron guns, mostly computers.
It's sort of a
mostly-
bit of both, really. So it just depends what phase of the experiments you're at. So there's making the things in the first place that we study. So quite often we go and we make stuff. That's always scary, all right, because I'm not a sort of card-carrying everyday synthetic chemist. So that's where Matt comes in, actually. He's a big support for the group and stops us blowing everything up and doing things wrong. And then there's doing the experiments on the thing. So you make the thing, you experiment with the thing by shooting electrons at it. How's that?
Electron gun. Okay, you're getting there.
Shooting
getting
electrons
there.
using an electron gun. There we go.
Right, we're getting
in
there.
a vacuum. So a lot of the time, actually, my students are in the lab going because the vacuum isn't holding. And so quite a lot of physical chemistry. You can speak to any experimental physical chemist is trying to get a vacuum. Okay, so it's getting the sticky tape over the holes. But once we've got a vacuum and once we've got everything aligned and everything's working, then we can do the experiment, which actually only takes a morning. And then they'll spend perhaps a month doing calculations and doing analysis of their data, writing papers, and then all the other things that postgraduate students do. So demonstrating, outreach, eating, sleeping, preferably not on the job.
Yeah. Which transitions nicely to my next question.
Yeah.
You wear another hat apart from researcher in the department, and until recently you were the postgraduate coordinator, and you're also the honours
Yes.
coordinator. So that makes you a good person to talk about if you're planning on going into honours and or masters and or PhD, right? Because you know a lot about this.
Yeah.
So my question is, what advice do you have to these guys who are all here because they're thinking about potentially going into research, either in terms of choosing courses in third year, maybe doing Chem 329, or just generally how do you structure your degree, and or what do you do if you're interested in going into research?
Yeah, find something that you're really passionate about and interested in would actually be my best advice. I mean, if you're interested in chemistry, you'll be doing all the chemistry courses, right? So find something that really piques your interest and then go and talk to the right people. So go and talk to the people who are working in that area. And you may not know who's working in that area, that's the key. And so that's where coming and talking to somebody like me or any academic actually would be really, really helpful. Because we can then point you in the right direction. So you're interested in computational stuff, then you might talk to Deb or me at a push or somebody else. If you're interested in moths, then you go and talk to Paul. If you're interested in, I don't know,
Proteins,
then go and talk to Jodie or Tim.
Yeah.
Or if you really want to be a hardcore organic chemist, then go and talk to Dan or Fez. So it's finding the right people to go and talk to. And don't think that you have to come up with a project, all right? If there's something that you're really, really interested in, then that's great. But go and talk to people about it and find out what they do and how what you're interested in can tie in with what they're doing and how you can work together to develop a project. Or, it may be that what you're interested in is actually going to fit in really nicely with what they're already doing. Okay? And so that's where is it called 329? Is that still what it's called? Yeah. That's where that little undergraduate project, that 4-week taster of research life can be really, really helpful. Because it doesn't just tell you about that particular group that you're working with, it tells you about the postgraduate cohort in general. And you find out about what other people are doing just by talking to them. Okay, so you're not just up in that research space, whether it's on the 4th or the 5th floor of Ernest Rutherford, wherever it may be, just only talking to your little group, okay? The postgraduate cohort is incredibly social, and they all talk to each other, they'll all go to the tea room, they'll do this, they'll do that, and they'll all interact with each other, and so it's a really, really good way to find out what other people are doing. And there may be something you've not thought of that somebody's doing that's actually really, really interesting.
Right, so I just want you to confirm for me that we haven't rehearsed this.
No.
So
You
everything
can see that
you
when I walked
said,
in.
so everything that you said, that these guys may have heard a number of times before about like doing something you're interested in and contacting people. I didn't actually tee that up with you, right?
No,
Okay.
no.
Just wanted to kind of confirm that.
No, but I say it over and over and over, so clearly other people may have picked up on it. But
I think it's just generally.
no, it's general.
good
It's
advice.
just general common sense, right? If you're interested in something, go and talk to them about it. And it really is that contact with people. You know, it's all very well to be interested in something, but you've got to go and talk to people about it. And don't be scared. I know sometimes it can be a little bit sort of, you know, the glass wall, and then there's this academic sitting in their office scowling and banging away on a computer. But we're not all like that, okay? And actually, if you really, really, really want to get an academic talking, just ask them about their research, and off they go. They love talking about themselves and that sort of thing, actually.
So I've actually spoken to these guys, the ones who are in third year, about potentially doing 329 because they've only got kind of one semester to go.
Yeah.
If you're in second year, I will schedule a session for you guys to talk about doing that course potentially at the end of this year, so you can do it as a summer course or potentially as part of your third year. So it's not like I don't love you guys and don't want you to do research. It's just that I wanted to prioritise talking to the third years because they've only got one more semester to have a shot at it, whereas if you're in second, you've got a bit more time to do some research into research. So I'm talking to people and finding out what you're interested in and what people in the department are doing. So another way of finding out what people in the department are doing is doing what you're exactly doing now, right? Coming to this and hearing about what people like Sarah and I do.
Absolutely. And talking really is key.
It really is. I have another unrelated question. So you've had a number of honours, masters and PhD students now. What happens to them after that? So like what kind of jobs do they go on to do and stuff like that? Because in the end, you can't stay at uni forever unless, you can, but look how that ends up.
We're kind of the exception, not the rule, yeah.
You can stay in school forever, but maybe, most people will probably go out into something that we like to refer to as the real world, but we don't really know. So what do your gang tend to go on and do?
Bit of a scary world out there. I think that's why we stayed in academia, right? But we do recognise that at postgraduate level that the majority of students are doing that to get a higher degree, to give themselves a step up into the workforce. And so it isn't just about the research that you're doing, it's about all the other skills that you acquire at that higher level as well. So a higher level of data analysis, higher level of critical thinking, higher level of teamwork, higher level of individual work, that sort of thing.
Problem solving,
all the usual things that we talk about, but just at that advanced level, and it ramps up obviously through honours, masters, PhD. And so my students go off into a variety of disciplines. So I've got several who've gone off into teacher training. So they've already had a sort of background interest, if you like, in the outreach side of things as well, and have really wanted to go off and do teacher training, and they wanted a higher degree before they did that. Quite a few of them go off into data programming type jobs because they've acquired some programming skills throughout their studies. One or two have gone off and continued in academia in postdocs overseas. Have you talked about the postdoctoral funding system in New Zealand?
I've talked about how depressing it is.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Just checking.
The quality of jobs has gone down over time, and the number of opportunities for people who are well trained with a university education is not getting any better. So I think they're well appraised of the general environment.
But I would put a flip side on that and say that it is slowly improving. So there's a whole load of early career postdoc fellowships that have just been released by the government called Fithinger fellowships, so for that early career postdocs. So you do a postdoc and then get one of those. Doing that first postdoc is the key, of course. But there are lots of opportunities overseas. Now, all the way through my undergraduate and postgraduate and postdoc, actually, I was encouraged to move somewhere else. And I didn't want to. I really liked Edinburgh. I didn't want to leave. It's a really nice place. And the alternative for an electron diffraction group in the UK was Reading. And I don't know if anybody's from the UK. No, Reading's a dump. All right, Edinburgh's really nice. Reading's not. So I didn't really want to move within the UK. But then there came opportunities. There were jobs in Australia, and there were actually 3, I think, jobs advertised in New Zealand. And so took the plunge. Took the plunge to try a different academic system. And
tell me, I think that moving here was somewhat of an earth-shaking experience for you, was it not?
Yeah, I arrived in January 2011, so you can do the math.
Tell me about the day that you signed the contract on the house you were buying.
No.
That was the February
Friday.
20...
That was the Friday before the quakes. So we went unconditional on a property in Parklands, of all places. What was that, 4 days before? It was a Tuesday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then spent 3 months trying to not buy it, and ended up buying it and living in a squint house. And then, of course, you move out of that into a house that's normal. And then I felt really seasick for about a month because I got so used to adjusting to the house being squint that when I went back into one that was level, I actually felt quite ill for the best part of a month when I moved. But yeah, and all of that with 2 little kids as well. So Isabel would have been 5.5 months old when we moved out. Imogen was, what would she have been, 2 3/4. So toddler and a baby in tow, 5 weeks in a new place, didn't know anybody, and then everything fell down. So they shut the airport, so I couldn't leave. By the time they reopened it, I'd calmed down a bit and decided perhaps it wasn't so bad here after all. And with hindsight, actually, I think probably the best decision, because right now the UK's a mess.
Accurate.
So, yeah.
All right, so we've got to that time where I'm pretty much out of questions. So do you guys have any questions for Sarah? You've had like a while.
Okay. What are we doing?
A while to think about it. Oh yeah, close to 1:30.
Cool. All good.
Any questions? It could be about
So what does your research sort of focus around now at the moment?
Yeah, okay, so there's various strands to the research. One of them is looking at potential hydrogen storage materials. So it was the big buzzwords, but looking at it at a molecular basis. So looking at evolution of hydrogen and then actually regenerating these the initial species as well, because quite often with these hydrogen storage materials, you can get the hydrogen out of them, but then you're just left with a load of gunk that isn't very usable. So it's actually trying to make them a bit more user-friendly, as it were. What else are we doing? Still looking at the jack-in-the-box molecules. So they've got potential applications simply because they change colour. So you can use them as sort of photochromic type devices.
Go on.
How did you find jobs overseas? Like you said you knew there was someone Aussie and 3 in New Zealand. How did you find out?
So there was a website I was using called Jobs AC UK, which a lot of jobs get, academic type jobs get advertised on. So that's what I was looking for. And so they would be on there, and then you would apply through that. There are various assorted job-seeking websites out there, but nowadays actually social media is incredibly useful. So I have a Twitter account, but I use that mainly for professional networking opportunities. And so there's a lot of positions advertised through Twitter. So building up a network there has actually been really, really helpful.
Maybe you should get ahead of the curve and go professional TikTok. Sorry, do you know TikTok?
Yes, I do know TikTok.
Oh yeah, you've got a teenage girl. Yeah, right.
I'm ahead of you there. No, I will not TikTok. Or even TokTik. But yeah, I think nowadays social media is as good a way as any actually of finding things. And then there are plenty of job websites out there. Just have to hook into them. But any supervisor that you're working with, once you get up to that postgraduate level, for example, they also have networks, and so you use their networks and you use their advice around
where you could go, what you could do,
where to look, who's good to work with, who's not good to work with, because they know everything. And you know, you use those networks and you use that advice. But you would never ever go and work in a group without actually talking to the group. Sorry, that was the other piece that you were asking about advice.
Yep.
Talk to the students, all right? You can talk to the academics till you blue in the face and they'll spout all sorts of things at you, but go and talk to the students because they're the ones who are actually working with the academic and they're the ones who know what it's like, how reliable they are, how good they are, how much supervision you get, is it at an appropriate level. So you would certainly want to talk to any students before you would go and work in a research group.
You would also be a good person to talk to about applying for scholarships and stuff and how that works too,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what scholarships are available and
yeah,
that
so
kind of
the main scholarships at UC are the UC doctoral scholarships, which may or may not be going up in value, hopefully, which would be nice, and bring them up to the levels from around New Zealand. And then
but that's only for a PhD, right?
that's only at PhD.
So you have to
level,
have
yeah.
done something else before that.
An
honours.
Honours, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So that's the fastest route if you were sure you wanted to do a PhD.
Yeah, if you're sure you want to do a PhD, then honours is your route into that, for sure. And make sure you get good grades, so study hard, because your 300 level and your 400 level grades will count towards any scholarship.
We had a
assessment.
discussion about this, I think, last week about how the GPA is calculated. Your GPA
Yes,
is
I
calculated
think
for
it's like
these things.
I think it's like 2/3 400 level, a third 300 level, or something like that. Anyway, but the 300 level does count, so you really want to keep your grades up at the 300 level.
So for those of you in second year, good
Yeah.
news.
So for those
If
of
you wanna go into
300 level,
research.
you've got a very short amount of time to study. Go to it. But yeah, the 300 grades do count for the doctoral scholarship calculation. So it's really important to keep those grades up. And then, yeah, honours would be your fastest track into PhD, because you've got a 30-point research project in there, which then qualifies you for entry to PhD. Yeah.
So when should someone consider doing a master's rather than an honours? Just in your opinion, I mean, recognising there's no one true answer.
It depends. So if you are interested in going overseas for further study, then masters would absolutely be the default route, simply because the honours degree is being less and less recognised internationally in terms of entry to PhD, and that's purely because of the number of years that you will have studied. Okay, so we've actually had one of our top honours students come out of here, but only did 3 years because he was direct entry. So he did 2-year undergrad and then a year honours, so 3-year degree, and was not eligible for doctoral scholarship consideration at one of the top universities overseas because he hadn't done enough years of study, despite various letters from various of us. So
What did he end up doing?
stayed here.
Excellent, then
So their
UC
loss,
wins.
their loss
Yeah.
was our gain, but it was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, he's a straight A+ student all the way through from day one, and you know they wouldn't consider him for their scholarship because they'd only
Mhm.
done 3 years of study,
Mhm.
which is pathetic. But there you go. So yeah, if you are sort of dead set on going overseas, perhaps to do doctoral study, then absolutely a master's would be the route that you would take. Also, if you I was going to say we've changed. I changed the way we did our 400 levels. So you do a project in both years at masters as well. So you do the equivalent of an honours with the masters year as the second year on top of that. I guess the master's route is for those if you're not quite sure about further research and actually spending dedicated amounts of time in the lab. And it's a good way of finding out, because if you like it, then you can actually convert that master's year to the first year of a PhD if you can get funding. And if you don't like it, then you can stop at master's level and it's all fine. So, you know, the way we've got things structured in chemistry now, you can do your honours year and then a master's year or a PhD year. So the master's part 1 and the honours are essentially equivalent.
So a bunch of these guys are, I think, biochemists,
Mhm.
but I guess that if you're a biochemist, you can come talk to me because I'm the biochemistry coordinator,
Yeah.
but the rules for biochemistry are now quite similar to the rules for
Yeah.
chemistry, so...
And it makes sense because then you get that research experience at 400 level and you're sort of keeping up with the practical skills as well. So the old masters structure. You didn't do a project in the first year, which I didn't like because it kept you out of the lab and you didn't have those skills and you didn't sort of keep up to date with everything. Whereas if you're just continuing ticking along in the background with research, then it just keeps those skills going.
All right, do we have any other questions for Sarah? We do.
I was going to say, after your doctorate, did you spend much more time away?
Yeah. So I did a degree, PhD. I then had 2 postdocs. I was really quite lucky. I had a 3-year one, and then somebody left to do something, so there was 2 years of funding. So I did that. I then had a Royal Society of Edinburgh fellowship, which gave me 3 years of research funding, but I did some teaching as part of that because I wanted to keep the teaching and service side of the CV up, because by that point I'd kind of decided that I wanted to go down this route and it was the only way I was going to get a job. So I did some teaching and some service, low-level service around the School of Chemistry in Edinburgh as well, and then got the job here. So it was after the fellowship that I came here.
There were a few steps in between. You were an early adopter of the Zoom technology, were you not? Or was it Skype those days?
Was I?
Well, you didn't fly out here to interview, did you?
Oh, sorry, that was the other dumb thing. Yeah, do everything I say, don't ever do what I did.
What did you do? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was quite heavily pregnant with Isabel when I was interviewing for here, and so I couldn't actually fly, and so I did everything remotely. So when I accepted the job here, I'd spent half an hour or thereabouts in Christchurch Airport on the way to Dunedin for one of the other job interviews a wee bit earlier. I'd never been to the university. I'd never met any of the people here in person apart from Peter Harland, who had been a visiting academic in Edinburgh. But even then, he sort of shut himself off in a room, and I would speak to him occasionally on the way through. So.
And then he retired a year after you
arrived.
And then
he retired a year after I arrived. But I'll tell you the funny arrival story as well before I leave. Involving Peter. So I'd not met anybody, I'd not seen the facilities, I hadn't met any of the staff, hadn't really connected with anybody. And then 5 weeks in, everything fell down and we were all kind of at home for another few months after that. So yeah, still here. Resilience, I think they call it.
So tell us this funny arrival story then.
Yeah. So it's a long way.
You can't promise a funny story and then not deliver, Sarah.
It's a long way from the UK, right? Okay, I don't know if anybody's been there, but it's a bloody long way. And when you're travelling with 2 small children, it's even more tiring. So by the time the plane got to Australia, I was like, I'll just stay here, thank you very much. I'll just stay in Sydney. I really don't want to get on the plane again. And then Australian immigration were like, I'm sorry, no, go. So I got on the plane.
Australians are assholes like that.
Yeah, no, they are.
I can say that.
Yeah, you are.
I have an Australian passport.
It's fine. Got on the plane, 3.5 hours later over the Tasman. I was absolutely ill as anything by the time I got off the plane. Just so jet lagged, it was awful. And just travel sick and the kids and what have you. Got off the plane and clearly looked like shit, quite frankly, because nice friendly policeman clearly had nothing else to do with his day. Took one look at me and went, oh God, right. Got all the trolleys and everything, gathered all the bags, the buggies, the car seats, everything relating to the children, everything we had, suitcases. Shoved it on several trolleys, fast-tracked us through everything, and of course out into the arrivals hall, where Peter was waiting to meet the academic that he'd only ever met once in Edinburgh. And so, the arrival of the new shiny academic
under
in chemistry
escort.
was under police escort. And the look on his face, he was like, okay, what did you do? I didn't do anything, I just feel ill. So at which point the policeman was like, have a nice day, and disappeared off. So yeah. But yeah, technically I arrived into Christchurch under police escort.
I think I can beat that story though. It's not technically my story, but I had a student come from, I think, University of Nottingham come to work in my group, and he was an avid archer. So he brought his archery kit. Let me tell you that an archery kit, the container for an archery kit is exactly the same as the container for high caliber weaponry. He did not get escorted through customs by a
pointy stuff in it.
Oh no, they didn't even bother x-raying it. They just took one look at it and went, you're a terrorist. And took him straight to Christchurch Central Police Station, where they opened it up and went, it's a bow and arrow. And he was like, yeah, and it's not even a hunting bow and arrow. It's just like a sport bow and arrow. And he's like, yeah, I do archery for sport. And the police like, Just go. Just get out of here. Right, cool.
Yeah,
On that
the
note,
other highlight of travelling as a chemist is when you get pulled over for the
I gotta check about that.
explosive checks. So quite often in Germany, they seem to have very sensitive systems in Germany. So the handbag swab is always, in that room, go on. And then the Germans with jackboots and guns turn up, and then they look at you and say, so what do you do for a job? I'm an academic in chemistry, and they go, off you go.
at least it's in Germany and not in the US, because
But they just shoot you,
that would be
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna let you go because you've got to go and run a test for some
so
fun 114 students.
Anybody came through 114 at any point, but they've got their test this evening, and I've got an early sitting at 3 o'clock.
Thank you, Sarah. And Jude just arrived, so I'll get him to come up here,
Yeah,
and we'll carry on. Cool. Thanks.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
I know.
Tag in and out.
All right, so Jude's looking a little bit uncomfortable because we don't normally put him up in front of other people, but that's okay.
Does it get easier or?
Yeah, it does.
I'm a friendly interviewer, right?
Yeah.
All right, so
Can I sit down?
you can sit down if you want. Okay, so welcome, Jude. So I've already told these guys that you're the president of ChemSoc. Is that right?
No.
You're not.
I'm the treasurer.
You're the treasurer. Oh, the actual important job, the one who handles the money, right?
Sure.
Jude is the treasurer of ChemSoc. Can you tell these guys a little bit about how you came to be the treasurer of ChemSoc, but also a little bit about what you've studied at uni and what you're doing now?
Sure. So currently I'm doing a double degree. So I'm doing a BSc, or I've done a BSc in chemistry, and now I'm doing a Bachelor of Engineering in Chemical and Process Engineering. So it's that fun double degree pathway. So I finished my chemistry portion of my degree, and I'm now a full-time engineer in Second Pro.
What you do is you're major in chemistry.
Organic chemistry.
You did organic chemistry, and you did the Chem 329 project, didn't you?
Yeah, so I did the summer research project with Professor Fairbanks, and I did a bunch of reactions with different sugars and trying to find a shorter synthetic route to a specific sugar that they were looking into.
And you did that actually over summer and at the end of your second year, is that right?
Yeah, so I did, at the end of my second year, and it's supposed to be 4 weeks, but I think I ended up spending five and a bit.
Yeah, you were super keen.
Yeah.
I remember that. So how have you found the transition from doing thinking like a scientist to having to think like an engineer?
Oh, that's probably the hardest part about engineering, or doing the switch, and I struggled with it a lot during my summer internship, because I started off.
What was your summer internship? That's different to this summer project, right?
Yes, yeah.
So
So
what was
I did a summer internship in a company called Carbonscape, and they're an engineering company that's doing some R&D into making graphite from renewable resources. So I started that job, and I was looking at really academic papers, and I was trying to find new ways of finding different. I can't really talk much about it, but I was trying to find new ways of finding it, and I went to my supervisor, and he was more like, that's good, but we're more interested in, the final product doesn't have to be as efficient or as good as you think it needs to be. It just needs to be more cost effective. So, and there were a lot of things that I had to consider as an engineer that I would never have thought of to consider as a chemist, and vice versa. As for the degree itself, it's tough, but you expect it to be a bit tough when you miss quite a bit of the fundamentals, but it's definitely doable and manageable.
Cool. Do any of you guys, particularly people who might be considering that pathway, I'm seeing a lot of oh fuck no, have any questions for Jude about doing that? So you also did quite a bit of maths. You must have
so you
quite
have
a
to
bit of
do
maths in your BSc too, right?
You have to do some specific maths papers if you want to be accepted into the engineering program. And honestly, if you go through that way, your mathematical skills are probably better than your fellow engineers at that stage.
But you're just less indoctrinated into the engineering way of thinking?
I suppose, but also you just have done more maths at a higher level.
Sure.
And yeah.
All right, cool. Then we might move on to, because it's getting close to 3 now, we might move on to talking about what you want to come here to talk about, which is the ChemSoc stuff, and tell us a bit about Buddy Week that's actually Buddy Turn.
Yeah, so I'll explain what Buddy Week was 2 years back. So it was a week in where undergraduates can find postgrad students and then follow them around and see what they're doing, learn about.
It's not creepy at all.
Yeah.
It just sounds creepy.
You've got permission, don't worry. And yeah, so you just follow them around.
16 under.
Yeah, you gotta make sure you stay hidden. If they detect you, you're out of the unit. But yeah, so you follow them around, you learn what they're doing, you see what it's like to be a postgrad, and the advantage for you guys is that you see whether postgrad is something you want to do, you see, you can find out which groups you specifically want to do it in, and see what life as a postgrad's like. Now the issue when it was Buddy Week is that you only really got a few hours, and you only had a chance to go with one postgrad. So that's not really, it doesn't help you see which group you want, it doesn't give you a lot of time to understand what life is like for them. So what we're doing this year is we're going to open it up for an entire term, and you get in contact with a postgrad you like the name of, or like the work of, and you see you sort out how many times you want to meet with them, you sort out what you want to do between the two of you, whatever you're happy to do and whatever they're happy to do, and you can do it as often as you want over the term, and you can do it for however long as well. So currently we're planning to have it open for third years, because the third years are the ones who need to decide pretty soon what you're doing next year. But depending on numbers, we might potentially open it up to second years too.
And how are these guys going to be able to find out how they apply?
So we'll be sending if you're a member of ChemSoc, we'll be sending around what's it called? Like a little form that you can fill in through your emails, and you can fill in then, and then towards the start of next term, we'll get in touch with everybody who's signed up, and we'll say, here's the list of all the postgrads who are volunteered. If there is a postgrad or if there's a certain research group you want to tag along and shadow, and they haven't volunteered, get in contact with us, and we can try and sort something out for you. But yeah, so
You're going to apply some pressure.
yeah.
Take around your
probably
kneecapping device and be like,
Yeah.
You can either have an
I'm
undergrad
not saying
or...
violence, but definitely something big and heavy and look intimidating.
Right, yeah, no, okay, nice.
Yeah.
And if these guys aren't members of ChemSoc,
You
could
can.
I forward that on to them as members of this group, or...?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I might do that as well. So some of you might get that twice, but that's cool, I think.
You could have signed up twice.
Yep. And will there be a limit to how many so it's running for a whole term.
Yeah.
Will there be a limit to how many times that people can do this? So
No, I mean that's kind of
okay. So
yeah.
so if you want, you can try and nominate 6 people. I guess it will just depend on how many postgrads there are available and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it really depends on how much time you have, how much time the postgrads have, and how willing they are and you are.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
But the whole point is that you get to trial out different groups. So we are also intending to run it in term 4 of this year as well.
Okay.
So at that point, we'll definitely be opening it up to the second years.
Okay. Cool. Anything else? These guys. Questions? Yes.
Hi.
So when you send through the list of postgrads, you'd also put next to their names, roughly what they're doing?
Yeah. So we'll write, we'd have written what the name of their project is, if they know. Some postgrads don't quite know what the name of their project is yet.
Okay. That's news to me.
Or they haven't tuned it out. They haven't
Sure.
perfected it.
Yep.
We'll also do broad categories: organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, metallic chemistry, so on. Some postgrads have also sent through what you guys will be able to do if you're with them. So all the tasks you can accompany them on, or even do by yourself. And also, if they did their undergrad degree at UC, we've also asked them to forward their third-year courses so that you guys can see if they're a good match for the courses you've done. And if you really enjoyed this course, you can tell if they've done this course,
Are you also sending out photos, or is it just going to be a list?
None
would
of
be
the
kinda creepy,
none of the
probably.
postgrads were keen on photos.
Yeah, I believe that.
We wanted to do a full photo shoot, but
Also, organizational overhead, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have to actually get around and take the photos of all
Yeah.
the people and stuff. Yep. Okay, any other questions about Buddy Week /term? Nope. Sweet, then I think we're done. If you do have any other questions, you can either hang around here and ask Jude, or send them to me. I'll get answers if I don't know the answers already. Thank you, gang. Thanks, Jude.
yeah.